So in terms of exercises, I was just thinking for the installation and documentation, I just wanted you to have a look, basically. So I put a couple tasks down there, essentially looking through the documentation a little bit and trying to figure out what functions we're actually going to talk about over the next couple days. Just having, so if you start off by doing $MP map, that'll give you a starting point for looking up some of the names of functions, but there are links essentially on most of the functions to other functions used for similar tasks. And so hopefully you can find some. It doesn't really matter if you look up linkage map construction or visualization, anything like that, but have a look through the documentation and see if you can figure out what kinds of things we might be using, and also, I mean, hopefully the names are descriptive enough that you can figure out just by looking at them what they might be used for. The other couple exercises are actually looking at files and trying to identify, based on what I've told you about what might cause problems and based on the documentation, which of these two sets of data is not going to work if you try and load it in. And so I've put up data sets from the founders, the finals, the pedigree, and the map. And one of them works. It comes from actually a simulated data set, and the other one is not going to work. There's been something changed which will make it not work, and see if you can identify. And since you don't have copies of these, let me put up a link that will make it easier, and then you can just look at the slides yourself. So probably the easiest thing to do . Let's do that. Okay. What is the link here? Okay, I'm going to do this. Okay, that's a little bit big. Can everyone see that? Yep. Okay, if you go to that link, there'll be the slides, there'll be the R Markdown file, which you can open in RStudio, and there's also the HTML file, which I was having trouble opening from GitHub, so I'm not sure that will work. If you open the R Markdown file, yeah, actually I'm not sure whether that will show it. Let me see if I can make it into a PDF, and that might make it easier. And I'll put the PDF up there as well. Okay. Oh, you're going to be kidding me. I can't find this. Okay, let me try this in this format then. And if not, I'll just put the slides up. Okay. So if you can get there, let's see if that, no, so that's not going to work. Even if you download it, I don't know if that'll work either. Hmm. No. So trying to open in the HTML does that work for you? No. Yeah. Yeah, the RMD files, so if you go down to the bottom under exercises, it won't knit properly, probably because not all the files are there, but the data files that it's reading in the exercises are under this workshop folder under data part 1. So you can just take a look at it there if you want. And so that has the 2 founder files, the 2 final files, the 2 maps, and the 2 pedigrees. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I'm just going to close that up then. Okay. That's what I get for redoing that. No. All right, let's just do that again. It's easier. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to look at it a little bit now. Does anyone have any idea of what we might talk about tomorrow during linkage map construction, or that you might have questions about? No functions came up.
It came up, but
what would be one of the functions that came up for?
if our studio locks up on you, kind of.
Our studio locked up. Great. Okay.
I got about halfway through. So that was an order.
MP order. So that's one of them. Yep. MP order we'll definitely talk about tomorrow. That's used for putting markers on a chromosome in an order where we're trying to optimize basically the overall length of the chromosome, or we're trying to put markers into blocks where you have tightly linked markers together. Any other functions that someone saw while looking through the documentation? MP cross, that's the constructor function, so that's how you make an object that you can then operate all the other functions on, basically. One of the main functions is called MP_est_rf. So just as Carl had an s.rf, we have one for estimating recombination fractions as well. That does most of the computational hard work in terms of constructing a linkage map, and then the rest of the work is not as computationally difficult because at that point we can break things into linkage groups and treat each of them separately. So we're dealing with a smaller number of markers. So add 3-point is a function we have for adding markers to a map. So most of the computation is done based on pairwise recombination fractions, and that's an extra function for putting markers in later on if you have, if you want to look on a smaller scale and add them to the map, essentially.
So is it fair to say that most of the link map construction things start with NP? Or are there
Most of the main functions start with MP.
not just link map?
Not just linkage map. So for example, the main function for QTL mapping is called MPIM. For linkage map construction, there's also MP group. And just trying to think, a lot of the ones which don't start with MP tend to be ones, as I said, which are used for very specific functions, are used within other functions. They tend to be more internal ones. So things like yeah, I'm trying to think of one that's done. Yeah, there's a bunch of ones which are basically sub-functions of other ones. So the MP ones do tend to be the main ones. There's one MP collapse, MP expand, things like that, which are also used for linkage map construction. In terms of importing the data, how many people think that the first one there is the one you should use? Okay. How many people think the second one is the one you should use? Okay.
I don't think many of us got that far.
Oh, okay. All right. All right, just looking at it, I'll do another vote. Who wants to vote for the first one? Okay, we got a lot more that time. And the second one? Okay. So the problem with the second one is that it's not numeric. That's the issue there. Okay, in this case, you have both of them are numeric. Now, this is assuming that you have the data from the previous slide. So this first one is the correct one. All right, so you have zeros and ones for all the parents. Looking at this, if you can see it, which of those two do you think will work? Who thinks the first one will work? Okay, who thinks the second one will work? Okay, what's the problem there? Right, so that too, the problem with it will technically still work, but the issue is that it looks like you're inheriting an allele that's not coming from any of the parents. So you're going to have to throw out that marker. There's clearly either a genotyping error or something has gone wrong in your data, and that's not the line you think it is. Okay, in terms of the pedigree, any ideas what the problem with one of them is here? That's true. Nothing's observed in the second one. Actually, they're both wrong in that sense. So the problem with the first one is that even though your parents are genotyped, in the pedigree, we only want to mark as observed the finals, which are genotyped. So having the parents marked as observed actually causes problems, which is somewhat counterintuitive. I know people have said, well, look, we observed our parent genotypes. We should mark them as one, but it's just the way it's set up. So it's only supposed to be the finals, which are observed, which are listed in the pedigree as ones.
That doesn't help you phase your...
So in all of our data, we have inbred lines, and that's one of the assumptions made in MPMAP. All of our parents are inbred. All of our progeny are inbred.
Right, if L5 and L6 are crosses from L1 through L4,
Yep.
then you don't necessarily know the phase of those markers, right? But if you have the parents, you do.
We don't have any data on L5 and L6 typically.
Okay.
So as all of the magic populations I've seen at least, you have data on the parents and you have data on the very final inbred lines and nothing in between. If you have information on the intermediate generations, that could be very helpful in terms of actually tracking the descent of alleles through the pedigree, but I haven't actually met anyone who does yet. So that would be something to talk about and change if it came up.
But still, if you have lines at the end, I would think that knowing the phase of the parents originating them would help someone.
So if the parents are inbred lines, then both chromosomes are the same. So I'm not sure what you mean by knowing the phase there.
Well, like if L1 and L2 and L3 all share allele 1 and L4 has allele 2.
Yeah.
And then the neighboring marker, allele, or parent 1 and 2 have allele 1.
Yeah. So knowing the genotypes definitely does help you. It's just in the pedigree we don't record the fact that we know them. That's just how it's set up here. So definitely you want to have the parental genotypes. It's just that's not how we record in the pedigree. So that I just wanted to flag that because it has come up before. And then in terms of the map here, so I didn't talk that much about importing a map file because I'm going to talk about linkage map construction tomorrow. But basically the map file is set up so you have a matrix where you have a column of marker names, you have their chromosome, and if you have the position information, you put it there. And so in this first one, we have positions 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, so every 2 centimorgans. And in the second one, we have those positions as well, but they've been permuted. So this first marker is now the last one, and the other ones are all mixed up as well. Any guesses which one works? The first one. Having it in the right order is the better way to do it. It is possible to have it mixed up, but it can cause problems as well. So it's much safer to have them in the correct order, which is typically how people store their maps anyway, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. So at this point, are there any questions? Those basically are the data files to import. We keep them separate and we keep them in fairly basic formats in terms of matrices and vectors, just so that fewer things can go wrong. So there certainly are potential problems that can come up, but if you keep it fairly simple, and actually if you import your data into R and create these matrices first, you're less likely to have a problem. So that was pretty much all I wanted to cover for today, honestly. Like I said, it's a brief introduction to get you to have a look at some of the documentation, make sure everything is actually installed, and if you have data that you want to import, give you an idea of where things can go wrong, so that if you try and do it in order to prepare for tomorrow, that we can talk through what some of the problems might be and where you might run into them, basically. But other than that, everything else we'll talk about tomorrow.